If your radiator is looking kind of rough like mine here, you can kind of see it. Look at this. That's not how your radiator is supposed to be. This is supposed to be kind of welded onto this bracket that holds it in place. So as you can tell, not the case today. So we are going to be replacing that today. Now you can kind of see I've already gotten a little bit ahead of myself. I've removed this hose. I mean, nothing crazy with this, just a screwdriver, whether it's a Phillips or a flathead. Get 2 clamps off and you should be able to remove that hose. Same thing on the bottom. Again, you can kind of see here mine is missing because I went ahead and already dumped my coolant. You can dump your coolant by opening this little thing here. That should be able to dump it straight down. Then you can just remove this hose as well, and that will be able to dump it down as well. If you do want to do a flush, I do recommend you do that. You can look at Chris Fix's video. He has a great video on how to super flush your system. I went ahead and did that a little bit before this, so I have just distilled water in there that came out. You want to use distilled water though. Don't use regular water because that can damage the inside of your engine. But we are basically just ready to start taking this off. Now, another thing you might notice here, I don't have a radiator shroud, a fan shroud, however you want to call it. So I don't have to do anything as far as this goes. My truck never had it since I own it basically, and it hasn't overheated or done anything weird. So I'm just gonna run it without it. I also haven't found one that isn't broken or that isn't crazy expensive. So again, I'm just gonna run it this way. But if you do have one in place, that you obviously will have to take a couple extra steps to take that off. You might have to remove the fan if you do have a shroud to get it out. I believe that's a 10 millimeter bolts over here for the fan. There might be some 10 or 12 millimeters for the shroud itself, and then you should be able to take it out. So you guys can go ahead and do that, but since I don't have it, I'm not gonna do that. But to remove the radiator itself, we have 2 12 millimeter bolts on this side, 2 12 millimeter bolts on the other side, and then we should be able to just kind of take this off. This might get in the way for you, so just be aware of that. You can work around it or maybe use an extension to get it. And then we should be also able to remove our reservoir here, and hopefully our new one is going to work in place, so that way it looks a lot cooler in here in the engine bay. But yeah, we're looking good here. Nothing too crazy so far, so we're just going to go ahead and finish taking this off. I mean, look at how loose this is. Terrible. And just real briefly, I want to show you guys the parts that we are going to be installing in the truck today. This is a nice aluminum radiator. We have also our nice and coolant. I heard this one works great on the truck, so that's what we're going to go with. Upper and lower radiator hoses, a couple other hoses, like I said, for some of the ones that are leaking. Brand new thermostat, brand new gasket, and this is going to be our new reservoir if we can make it work. Now, this is not specific for this truck. This is just kind of a universal thing. So I'm hoping it's going to work out nicely because then it'll match kind of nicely to our radiator. So with that in mind, we're going to move on to the truck and finish removing the old one so we can get installing this one. Let's do it. Alright guys, and just before I move on to putting the actual radiator in place, I went ahead and remove my thermostat cover here. And one thing you most likely will have is that your gasket here is most likely kind of melted into both pieces of it. You can kind of see there's a lot of residue in here. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape it. If you have a plastic scraper, that would be the ideal. I have a metal one, which is definitely not ideal, but I'm going very carefully on here and just kind of scraping the old material off to make sure we have a nice clean surface to be ready to put our new thermostat and our new gasket in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. We also removed the hose right here. As you can tell, I covered my alternator just in case there was any coolant that might come out. We wanna make sure we protect that. But we took this one out. The easiest way to take this one out is to just take the top one here and then twist in on the bottom here. And then we're gonna be able to put our new one in place. And then the most important one that I need to replace today is gonna be the one that you can't see, which is right below here. My finger is right on it. There's a hose here that goes into this little bar as well. That one is actually kind of cracked a little bit on mine and it's leaking when it's hot. So I need to make sure I replace that one. So let's go ahead and keep moving in progress so that we can actually move in and put our new radiator in place. Let's do it. All right guys, so I went ahead and replaced all of my coolant hoses. Basically the only thing that hasn't been replaced today is this back one, just because I had done that one already. And I do want to call attention to, if you are replacing the back hoses here, try to get the molded ones. I know some people ask me about this. They had some generic hose in there. I don't recommend you do that. Get the molded ones. They're going to go right into place and where they need to go with the brackets here in the back. And also be real careful whenever you're taking it out of here. This area in particular is very fragile most of the time. It's attached to the heater core, and you don't want to break that off because then you're going to have to go ahead and remove everything on the inside to replace that part. So be real careful. Hold it as best as you can. Twist the hose off of it, and then put the new hose in place by holding it. That way you hopefully don't mess it up. Now everything else here is attached. Again, that one I didn't replace it because I had already done it previously. This one I did replace. I replaced the one underneath the intake here. We replaced the one right by the thermostat. We have a new thermostat in here. We are ready to put our gasket in place and then put our cover and then go ahead and move on and to put an actual radiator in place. So let's do it. One quick thing, if you are replacing your thermostat, make sure the little pin is at the top. You do not want that to be on the bottom, otherwise you're going to have issues with bubbles and air being caught in the system. So just make sure that little pin is at the top before you put everything back together. Check it out, the radiator is in place, and a few things to note on this. Right off the bat, I can tell you this does sit a little bit higher in here. It's not as low as it used to be, at least compared to the factory one. So if you did want this to sit a little bit lower, you would have to make some new holes on the brackets here on the side for you to be able to attach it in the factory position that it goes. It doesn't bother me. I don't think it's going to bother this. We're going to check it out a little bit later, close the hood, make sure nothing is touching there. But I don't think it should be an issue. We'll find out. Now, another thing I want to point out as well is that wherever you're going to actually attach it here on the bottom, the holes are not 100% the right size. You might have to Dremel them out a little bit just for it to all attach in the right spot. I mean, this happens with aftermarket parts a lot. We've seen this. Right here, we're using the factory spot right here on the bottom. You can see it right there. And there's another one down there. The one on the bottom over here is kind of barely in there. But I did have to basically drill this out a little bit just so it can go in there right. So keep that in mind. You will have to do that to this particular radiator if you are going this way. Now, another thing I want to point out as well, with the upper and lower radiator hoses, sometimes they're kind of cut to fit depending on which one you get. So with the Gates one here at the top, it looks to be about the right size. With the Dayco, this one is definitely way too long here at the bottom part, so we will have to cut a lot of this section out. And we are going to use the old hose just to kind of measure and get the exact measurement here, and then we're going to cut it and put it on the bottom. But yeah, we are looking pretty good here. I mean, this is looking pretty nice. I think it matches kind of like the rest of the little aluminum we have in here. So some of the chrome and stuff like that, it's just going to tie in the engine bay a little bit nicer. Now we will have to go ahead and after we do this, put the hoses on everything. I'm going to move on to doing the little reservoir here on the side. So let's go ahead and finish up here with the hoses. Make sure everything's clamped up nice and tight. And then we're going to move on to the right side. Alright guys, so once you have all that done, you can go ahead and connect your overflow tank here on the side. You kind of see that mine is missing now. Fill up your coolant and you're pretty much good to go. Get the bubbles out and all that. So because I like messing with things, we are going to go ahead and change my overflow tank here. And this might not work, so just keep that in mind. I'm doing this kind of on my own risk type of thing. This is obviously not a direct replacement for mine. This is a very generic overflow tank that I bought that we are going to try to make work. So if we look over here, we have the OEM overflow tank. Now, when we look at this, we do have a full and low line. And as far as I know, this is an overflow and not an expansion tank. And the difference between that is that this is not pressurized in any way. All the pressure happens here at the radiator and the cap. And because of that, I believe we should be able to use this kind of generic overflow tank since there is no pressure being built in there. And we should be able to just kind of put some coolant in there. And then as this does the job that it's supposed to do, then push any overflow over here and pull any as it cools down. Again, doing this at my own risk, do it at your own risk if you're going to do this, but we should be able to make this work. Now, what I did this to kind of help this, because obviously there's no brackets in this. This is a very, again, generic universal type thing. I have this bracket here that honestly, I don't even know where I got it from, but it just happens to work perfect with the bracket over here on my OEM one. Now, my OEM one here, it is flipped upside down. This actually is flipped the other way when it's in there after you remove the overflow tank. And this actually fits perfect in here. So that's gonna hold our new tank in place. We are gonna make some cuts right here on the side so we can put a clamp on it as well, so make sure we can secure it. And then we are gonna spray paint this black so it matches more in there, since the silver, it wouldn't look necessarily bad, but I would like that to blend in so the expansion tank actually is the one that shines more in here. So let's get to work. So I got my tank here. I have my bracket nice and painted here. The back could have used a little bit more, but it's whatever. We're not gonna see that. We have made the holes here to add our little C-clamp, and then we're just gonna basically put this in place where it needs to go, and then put our tank in there to make sure we can get it nice and secure and pretty much be good to go. If you do get one of these ones, make sure you get the one that has the top with the little hole in it. You want to have basically this tank be able to breathe. Otherwise, when the pressure builds inside of the radiator, it's gonna let some of that coolant out into the overflow tank. But if this has no way to breathe, then pressure is gonna start building up in here as well. And that's gonna basically lead to something that's not good. All right, guys, we are basically done here with the actual installation here of the radiator. We also came over here and put our new reservoir. I think it looks pretty dope. It worked out perfect with some of the brackets and stuff that I already had. I did have to get a little bit of a longer hose here just because the OEM one was a little bit too short now that this is a little bit lower there. But you can see there we have it nice and attached there to the bottom. We are gonna fill up this about maybe halfway or so, just so make sure it has coolant, so in case it does overflow and it sucks it back in, making sure we're not sucking in air. But we are now getting ready basically to start filling this up with the coolant that we have. Everything looks great so far. We made sure all our clamps are nice and tight as well. So we are looking good here. Let's move on to filling it up. All right, everyone, we are pretty much done here with the radiator and the overflow tank. I went ahead and started filling up the radiator here. So we have our no spill filler here, which is pretty nice as well. We got everything as filled up as I could, got all the bubbles that I could out of the system right now. You can see we still have some in there. I'm actually about to put a little bit more just because we need to turn on the truck and make sure it warms up, make sure we turn the heater on so that coolant can start circulating through the whole system and we can get any bubbles out of there because we don't want to have any bubbles in the system. So I also went ahead and filled my overflow tank about halfway. We want to make sure that if it does pull from there, there is some coolant and it's not pulling air into the system either. So we are pretty much good to go here. Let's go ahead and get the truck down, get it out of here a little bit so we can turn it on. Let's do it. All right, guys, we have her running now and making sure it's starting to get warm a little bit. Earlier, before I turned it on, I did notice I had a little leak in there, so we had to make sure I went and tightened up that bolt a little bit, with that clamp a little bit more. And then here we can see that bubbles are coming out. Again, as the truck warms up, the air is going to start to push out. This is the highest point on the truck right now, which that's what we're seeing this. So we want to make sure all the bubbles are out of the system before we completely seal this whole thing. So we're looking good here. We're going to let it warm up a little bit more. Then I'm going to turn on the heater, continue checking for bubbles. And once we don't get any more, we're going to close it and we're going to call this pretty much a job well done. I think it's looking good here. I'm excited about it. Hey everyone, it actually has been a couple weeks since the last clip and I wanted to run the truck into a couple more longer trips just to make sure we're gonna have no issues, especially with this new reservoir kind of coolant over here. And I ran the truck a couple times. We did a couple longer trips, ran it for about an hour or longer as well, just to make sure there's gonna be no problems. And I'm happy to report that this has not caused any issues whatsoever. Everything has been running super smooth. There's been no heating issues, no overheating or anything like that. The radiator is working great. The coolant reservoir is working great like it should. We have topped off everything. There are absolutely no leaks anywhere in the system. And I actually picked up this radiator cap as well that tells me the temperature right here on the top. So this is just a nice little visual aid, especially if you want to just kind of see a quick glance what's going on with the temperature there. You can kind of see that right away right here on the top. And obviously our temperature gauge inside of the cluster also works just as well. So super happy with the results. I think this cleaned up the bay really nicely so far. It makes everything look a little bit better. It does make some things look a little bit worse. I'm looking at this area back here. So we might have to maybe renew that in some way or fashion. But yeah, super happy with the results. Link you guys on the bottom of the description for everything that I kind of used today. So if you guys want to pick something up, check the description. There'll be links to everything out there. But yeah, that's all I have for today, guys. So thank you so much for watching. If you like what I'm doing, please don't forget to leave a like, hit the subscribe button, or leave a comment and let me know what your thoughts are on the video today. But yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.